the merchants who courted the crown. It began with a gesture so subtle that it escaped the notice of most Londoners. A group of ambitious merchants, weary of slow approvals and tangled bureaucratic pathways, extended their influence toward the one force that could reshape their fortunes with a single decision: the crown. It was a quiet courtship, built not on affection but on necessity, ambition, and the promise of mutual gain. London at the time was expanding faster than the state could manage. War, trade, and exploration demanded a level of coordination the crown struggled to finance and control. Merchants, meanwhile, possessed wealth, networks, and expertise, but lacked the authority to move beyond the limits of their charters. The two sides needed one another, even if neither wished to admit it openly, and so began one of the most consequential partnerships in the city's financial history. To understand how deeply this moment shaped London, we must step into an era when the boundaries between private enterprise and royal power were fluid and negotiable. It was a time when opportunity often depended on access, and access depended on knowing whom to persuade. The merchants recognized this. They knew that if they could position themselves as indispensable to the crown's ambitions, they could secure privileges no law had previously allowed. At first, the alliance appeared almost harmless. Merchants offered loans in moments of royal need. In return, they received modest concessions, trading advantages, ease restrictions, letters of support that smoothed their disputes abroad. But beneath these exchanges lay revealed the old guard failed to see. Every favor granted shifted the balance of power ever so slightly. Every concession eroded the distance that had once separated commerce from the throne. Soon, a new dynamic emerged, one where businessmen shaped royal policy as much as they followed it. Their influence grew not through force or inheritance, but through the strategic blending of capital and loyalty. The crown, constrained by its own financial limitations, welcomed the support. The merchants, driven by vision and ambition, pushed further. But as their confidence expanded, so did the unease among those who sensed the ground beginning to shift. A partnership forged in quiet necessity was beginning to carry consequences no one yet understood. London was moving toward a future where private ambition and public power would be intertwined, sometimes harmoniously, sometimes dangerously. And this was a moment when the first threads of that binding were laid. As the merchants deepened their ties with the crown, the relationship evolved from cautious cooperation into a strategic dance. What had begun as occasional financial support soon became a steady current of influence flowing between court and counting house. Each new loan strengthened the merchant's position. Each royal favor bound the crown more tightly to their ambitions. And quietly, the balance between authority and enterprise began to tilt. In London's coffee houses, whispers circulated about the growing closeness. Some traders marveled at the merchants' boldness, impressed by how they navigated the corridors of power. Others muttered that such intimacy with the crown was dangerous, a breach of an unspoken boundary that had long protected the city from political entanglement. Yet the merchants pressed on. They saw potential where others saw risk, convinced that proximity to the throne would accelerate London's rise on the world stage. Tensions surfaced when the crown faced yet another financial strain, an urgent need for resources that exceeded the Treasury's capacity. Instead of turning to traditional lenders or imposing new taxes, royal officials sought assistance from the same merchants who had proven both capable and willing. What followed was a negotiation far more consequential than any that had come before. The merchants provided the funds, but not without demanding privileges that stretched the limits of precedent. These privileges sparked quiet outrage among London's older institutions. Established guilds bristled at the merchants' growing freedom. Nobles resented their increasing visibility at court. Even some royal advisors warned that granting too much influence to private financiers could weaken the crown's independence. But the crown, pressured by circumstance, accepted the terms. And with each acceptance, the merchants' foothold grew firmer. Meanwhile, the merchants themselves began to form alliances beyond the city. They courted diplomats, corresponded with foreign agents, and used their new royal ties to negotiate abroad with unprecedented authority. Their reach extended into regions previously accessible only through official channels. The lines between public mission and private gain grew increasingly blurred. Yet beneath their successes, unease simmered. Rivals questioned how far this new power could extend before provoking backlash. Critics argued that the merchants were manipulating royal policy for personal advantage. Supporters countered that their involvement strengthened the nation, providing stability where the crown lacked resources. The conflict intensified when a major royal initiative, one requiring vast investment and delicate political coordination, fell increasingly under merchant influence. Officials found themselves relying not just on merchant capital, but on merchant strategy, allowing private interests to shape decisions once reserved for state. London felt the pressure mounting. The merchants' rise promised prosperity, but also threatened to destabilize the balance of power that had long defined the city's governance. Each new concession, each whispered rumor, each shifting alliance pushed the partnership closer to a boundary both sides feared crossing. And as these forces converged, the city braced for the moment when ambition, loyalty, and authority would collide, revealing the true cost of courting the crown. The growing alliance between merchants and the crown soon reached a point where neither side could deny its implications. What had once been a subtle exchange of favors now influenced decisions that shaped the entire kingdom. London streets buzzed with speculation. Some hailed the merchants as visionaries. Others whispered that they were overstepping, drifting into territories reserved for royal authority. The partnership, once convenient, now carried an unmistakable edge. The first major fracture appeared within the crown's own circle. Advisors who had long guided royal policy found themselves displaced by financiers whose expertise lay not in governance but in profit. Traditional counselors bristled as decisions were shaped by calculations of return rather than matters of state. Tensions simmered behind palace walls. Some feared the monarchy was yielding too much control. Others argued the merchants provided the stability the kingdom desperately needed. The divide deepened with every negotiation the crown entered under merchant guidance. Beyond the palace, merchants who lacked courtly favor began to sense their own vulnerability. The partnership benefited only a select few, creating an elite bloc whose influence dwarfed that of long-established guilds. Envy and suspicion spread across the city. Rivals wondered whether the crown's chosen allies would soon dominate foreign trade, domestic markets, and even national policy. Every rumor added fuel to a resentment that threatened to fracture London's commercial community. Meanwhile, the privileged merchants moved boldly. Armed with royal backing, they secured rights to trade in regions previously restricted. They negotiated with foreign powers as though they were extensions of the state. Their ships sailed not just with goods, but with the authority of the crown itself. This new power transformed them from ambitious traders into actors on the global stage. Yet with their ascent came secrecy, deals struck behind closed doors, terms concealed from competitors, and alliances formed without public scrutiny. The pressure escalated when a royal venture, one of unprecedented ambition, was set into motion. Though it bore the crown seal, its blueprint was unmistakably shaped by merchant influence. Vast sums were invested, new charters drafted, entire markets restructured around a project that promised enormous wealth, but carried risks few understood. For the first time, the fate of the kingdom and the fortunes of private financiers had become inseparably linked. Critics grew louder. Guild masters demanded oversight. Parliamentary voices warned of corruption cloaked as cooperation. Even foreign envoys expressed concern that London's private interests were now driving royal expansion. The merchants dismissed these anxieties as fear progress, but privately, they sensed the tension tightening. They had climbed too high to descend without consequence, and too quickly to avoid drawing the eye of those who feared disruption. Then came the first signs of strain. Costs ballooned, delays mounted. Politicians questioned the wisdom of commitments made without broad counsel. The crown, now deeply entangled, struggled to distance itself from the merchants' decisions. Pressure rose on every side. Wealth, influence, and royal favor had once seemed limitless, but now each advantage carried a shadow. London could feel the collision approaching. The merchants had stepped into a realm where ambition met authority, where the stakes exceeded profit, where miscalculation could unravel not just fortunes, but the fragile balance between private power and royal command. And as the venture swelled beyond anyone's control, the city braced for the moment when that balance would finally crack, revealing who truly held power and who had merely borrowed it. The breaking point came when the grand royal venture, so heavily shaped by merchant ambition, began to falter in full view of the kingdom. Reports of setbacks reached London with growing urgency. Ships delayed, overseas negotiations souring, costs spiraling beyond projections. Each failure tightened the pressure on the one alliance holding the enterprise together. The crown demanded answers. Rivals demanded accountability. And the merchants who once moved confidently through palace halls now felt the ground shifting beneath their feet. The crisis exposed everything that had been hidden beneath the partnership. Decisions made in secrecy were now scrutinized in the harsh light of public expectation. Privileges once granted quietly became subjects of fierce debate. The crown's advisors, long sidelined, returned with vengeance, accusing the merchants of overstepping their authority, of shaping national policy for private gain, of leading the kingdom into commitments it had never fully understood. In Parliament, voices rose demanding inquiry. Critics argued that no group of private financiers should wield such influence over the state. Supporters countered that the merchants had provided the resources the crown lacked, but the tide was already turning. Fear of instability outweighed visions of prosperity. The partnership that once promised mutual strength now looked dangerously unbalanced. As pressure mounted, the merchants found themselves battling on multiple fronts. Their rivals in the city seized the opportunity to reclaim lost ground. Spreading rumors accelerated the erosion of trust. Foreign agents whispered that London's bold expansion was faltering, weakening the kingdom standing abroad. Even the merchants' own networks began to fracture, strained by the weight of obligations they could no longer manage. The climax arrived when the crown convened a council to assess the future of the venture. For the first time, the merchants stood not as advisors but as subject to scrutiny. The chamber filled with an atmosphere thick as fog, every gaze sharpened by frustration or betrayal. Questions cut deep. Accounts were examined line by line, and the truth emerged. The merchants had driven the kingdom into risks too steep for any private interest to bear alone. The verdict was inevitable. Royal support was withdrawn. Privileges were rescinded or rewritten. The venture was restructured under tighter control, placing authority back into the hands of the state. Some merchants endured financial ruin. Others survived only by retreating into smaller, more controlled enterprises. Their age of near-political influence had burned brightly, but far too fast. Yet the resolution carried a deeper lesson for London. The crisis revealed that collaboration between the crown and the city could be powerful, but only when balanced by transparency and restraint. Ambition without oversight threatened not only fortunes, but stability itself. From this reckoning, new frameworks emerged, structures that defined the roles of merchants and monarchs with far clearer boundaries. London emerged wiser, its financial identity sharpened by the knowledge that true power must be shared carefully, checked consistently, and shaped by more than the ambitions of few. Sometimes the smallest shift in perspective becomes the beginning of a new future.